My grandmother's name was Estelle May Fontenot. She was the kind of woman who made biscuits every Sunday morning without a recipe. She just knew, by feel, how much flour, how much butter, and how long to fold it before the dough was right. She remembered every birthday in our family without writing them down. When my grandfather got sick in the late 1980s, she drove him 2 hours to the hospital in Baton Rouge 3 times a week for 4 years, without complaining once. And when he passed, she kept driving that same road every Sunday just to visit his grave and tell him about the week. She was the warmest person I have ever known. And for 60 years, from sometime in 1962 until the day she died in the spring of 2023, she kept her room in her farmhouse locked and told no one why. Not her 4 children, not my mother, not me. We found the key 4 days after we buried her. A true story. The locked room. This is what was inside. Part 1. Estelle. Iberville Parish, Louisiana. The woman before the room. I want to spend some time with you on who she was before I tell you what we found. Because that matters. That's the whole context. Without it, the room is just a strange thing that happened to a family in South Louisiana. With it, the room is something I still don't have the right word for. Estelle May Fontenot was born in 1931 in Iberville Parish, Louisiana, the third of 6 children in a French Creole family that farmed sugarcane on the same land her great-grandfather had worked. She grew up in the Depression, went to school in a building with 2 rooms, and married my grandfather Harold at 19 years old in a ceremony at St. Gabriel Catholic Church that my great-aunt described to me as the happiest day the whole parish had seen in years. She and Harold had 4 children between 1952 and 1961. My mother is the second. They lived in the farmhouse Harold built for her as a wedding gift. A proper house, white wood frame, covered porch, 3 bedrooms, and a kitchen that always smelled like something good was happening in it. That house is where I spent every Christmas and most summers of my childhood. I knew every room in that house. I knew the way the second stair creaked. I knew which kitchen drawer stuck in the summer when the wood swelled. I knew the smell of the front bedroom in the morning when the window was open. And the sugarcane fields were in the breeze. There was one room I never went into. At the end of the upstairs hallway, past the bathroom, past the door to the room I slept in when I stayed over, there was a door that was always closed. Always locked. I noticed it early. I must have been 4 or 5. I remember trying the handle once, the way a small child tries every handle, and it didn't turn. I asked my grandmother what was in there. She didn't get angry. She didn't hesitate. She just said, in the same calm voice she used for everything, "That room's not for us, Sha. Come help me in the kitchen." I was 4 years old. I came and helped in the kitchen, and I never asked again. None of us did. It was one of those things you absorb in families without anyone explaining it. This is not a question we ask. The door at the end of the hall is locked, and it stays that way, and we don't make it into something bigger than it has to be. My mother told me once, when I was maybe 16, that the room had always been locked. Even when she was a child. She'd asked about it once too when she was small. Same answer from Estelle. That room's not for us. We left it alone for 60 years. Estelle died on a Tuesday morning in April 2023. She was 91 years old. She passed at home, in her own bed, in the farmhouse she'd lived in since 1951. The morning nurse called my mother at 6:17 a.m. My mother called me. We buried her 4 days later at St. Gabriel, next to Harold, the way she'd always said she wanted. Part 2. The key. 4 days after the burial. It was my Aunt Cecile who found it. We were sorting through Estelle's belongings the Saturday after the funeral, the practical work that follows a death, the part that feels both necessary and wrong at the same time. Going through her clothes, her jewelry, and the papers in the kitchen drawer where she kept everything she considered important. Her Bible was on the nightstand where it had lived for as long as any of us could remember. A large King James Bible, black cover, the spine soft from decades of handling. My Aunt Cecile picked it up to set it aside and felt something shift inside it. She opened it. The key was in the lining of the back cover. Someone had carefully opened the fabric backing at the bottom. You could see the tiny, neat stitches, slipped the key in, and sewn it back up closed. The stitches were tight and even. Estelle had been a gifted seamstress. The repair was almost invisible, unless you knew to look. Cecile held it up. None of us said anything for a moment. It was an old key. Brass, tarnished to near black, a simple skeleton key of the kind used in interior door locks from the mid-20th century. Small. Lighter than you'd expect. Lord, my mother said. Very quietly. Just that one word. We all knew what it was for. We went upstairs together. My mother, Cecile, my Uncle Ray, and me. The 4 of us were standing in that upstairs hallway that I'd walked 1,000 times, looking at the door at the end of it. In the afternoon light, it looked the same as it always had. Just a door. Plain wood, painted white, the same as the rest of the hallway, and the brass knob are dark with age. My mother put the key in the lock. It turned, and we stood there for a minute, without opening it. I don't know why. Nobody suggested waiting. We just all stood there with the key turned, and the door unlocked, and 60 years sitting on the other side of it, and we weren't quite ready. My mother pushed it open. I'm going to stop right here for just a second. If you've never been to Red State Horror before, or if you've been here for a while and just never hit that button, this is the moment. Every week, I bring you a story like this one. Real people, real places, things that happened and stayed with the people they happened to, sometimes for decades, until someone gave them the right space to say it. That's this channel. Subscribe right now and turn on the bell. Every Thursday, I promise you it's worth it. Because what was on the other side of that door, what we found on my grandmother's desk and what it told us about a woman we thought we knew completely, is the part of this story I've been carrying for 2 years. Let me tell you what was in there. Part 3. The room. What 60 years of locked doors hold? The first thing we noticed was the smell. Not mold, not rot, nothing like that. The room was dry. The farmhouse had good bones, and the upstairs stayed dry even in South Louisiana humidity. It smelled like stillness, like the specific quality of air in a space that hasn't moved in a very long time. Dust and old paper, and something faintly floral that I couldn't place. We stood in the doorway for a moment before anyone stepped in. The afternoon light from the hallway reached about 3 feet into the room. Beyond that, it was dark. The single window was covered by heavy curtains, dark green velvet, thick enough that no light had come through them in years. Uncle Ray went in first and pulled the curtain aside. Late afternoon light filled the room. It was small, smaller than I would have guessed from the hallway, maybe 10 by 12 feet. The walls were bare except for one thing on the wall to the left of the window, which I'll get to. The floor was bare wood. Dust settled evenly across it. A single wooden chair sat in the corner near the window, the kind of simple ladder-backed chair that would have come with a farmhouse kitchen set in the 1940s or 50s. A small braided rug was in front of it. The colors faded to near gray. And a desk, an old wooden writing desk against the far wall, the kind with a slanted top that folds up to reveal a small storage compartment. The surface was clear except for 2 things. A small glass jar holding a single dried flower. A rose, I thought, though so desiccated it was hard to be sure. And a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon that had once been red and was now the faded color of old brick. Everything was covered in a fine, even layer of dust. Everything had been placed with care before the dust settled. The desk, the chair, the rug, the letters, placed deliberately, arranged. This wasn't a storage room. Nobody puts things in a storage room this way. This was a room someone had made for something. My mother walked to the desk. She stood in front of it for a moment without touching anything. Then she picked up the bundle of letters. The ribbon was dry and stiff. She worked it loose carefully. The way you'd handle something you understood was fragile. There were 11 letters, handwritten on plain white paper, folded in thirds the old way. No envelopes, just the letters themselves, folded and stacked and tied. She handed me the one on top. The handwriting was not my grandmother's. I knew Estelle's handwriting. I had letters from her in a box at home, birthday cards going back to my childhood. This was someone else's hand. Smaller. More deliberate. The ink had faded to a warm brown. At the top right corner, a date, March 14th, 1962. I read the first line, and I stopped. I handed it back to my mother without saying anything. She read it. She was quiet for a long moment. "Oh, Mama," she said, very softly. Just that. Part 4. What the letters said. The thing we didn't know about Estelle. I'm going to be careful here about how much I share. Not because I'm protecting a secret. I think my grandmother kept this room because she needed one place in her life that was entirely her own, and I want to honor that even now. But because some of what was in those letters belongs to my family, and I'm going to tell you what I can while leaving the parts that are ours to keep. What I can tell you is this. The letters were from a woman named Josephine. 11 letters were written between March 1962 and December 1963. They were written to Estelle. My grandmother had kept them carefully in that room, locked away for 60 years. They were love letters. I don't mean that loosely. I mean letters of the specific kind that people write when they love someone completely and have no other way to say it. Full of the kind of language that lives in the space between what you can say out loud and what you can only write down alone at a table late at night. My grandmother was married to my grandfather Harold in 1950. They were together for 41 years until his death. By every account I have ever had from anyone who knew them, and I have a lot of accounts. South Louisiana families talk. They had a good marriage. A real one. He was devoted to her. She cared for him through his illness with a faithfulness that people in that parish still mention when her name comes up. And in 1962, when she was 31 years old and had been married for 12 years and had 4 children, she received a letter from a woman named Josephine. And she wrote back. We found Josephine's letters. We did not find Estelle's replies. Those would have been with Josephine wherever she was. But you could read what Estelle had said in the way Josephine answered her. The way those letters read like 2 sides of a conversation. The last letter in the bundle was dated December 9th, 1963. Josephine's handwriting was different in it. Quicker, more urgent. Something had changed. The last paragraph said goodbye in a way that suggested it was final. After that, nothing. No more letters. The room was locked sometime in early 1963 or 1964, by our best guess based on the dates, and stayed that way. We don't know what happened to Josephine. We've looked. The name is a common one in South Louisiana. Without more information, we can't trace her. We don't know if they ever saw each other again. We don't know if Estelle ever told anyone. In 60 years, not a word, not a hint, not even in her final months, when she knew she was failing and had all the time in the world to decide what to leave behind and what to let go. She chose to leave the room locked. She chose to put the key somewhere her family would find it. In the lining of her Bible, sewn in with her own neat stitches, not hidden, placed, like she knew we'd look there, like she'd decided, at some point in her 91 years, that the right time for us to know was after she was gone. Part 5. The thing on the wall. What we almost didn't notice. I told you there was one thing on the wall. I've been saving it. On the wall to the left of the window, at eye level, hung a small photograph in a plain wooden frame. Black and white, about 4 inches by 6. 2 women, standing outside. A building behind them I didn't recognize, some kind of garden or courtyard. They were standing close. Not touching, but close in the way that people stand when touching, is not something they can do in public, and they know it. One of the women was my grandmother. Younger than I'd ever seen her in a photograph. She must have been in her late 20s or very early 30s. She was smiling in a way I recognized from other photographs, but somehow differently. Less composed. More open. The way a person smiles when they've forgotten to manage how they look. The other woman I didn't know. My mother looked at the photograph for a long time. That's her, she said finally. That must be her. We stood in that room for a while, the 4 of us, not saying much. The afternoon light through the window, the dust, the letters on the desk, the photograph on the wall. Uncle Ray, who is the least sentimental person in our family and who I have seen cry exactly once in my life, at Harold's funeral, sat down on the old ladderback chair by the window. He said, "She was always the strongest one of all of us. Now I know why." We took the letters. We took the photograph. We left the room, otherwise exactly as it was. The desk, the chair, and the dried rose in the little glass jar. My mother pulled the curtain back closed. We shut the door. We didn't lock it again. I've thought a long time about whether this was mine to tell. I've decided it is, for one reason. Not because it's strange. Not because it's unexplained in the way that some of the things I cover on this channel are unexplained. What was in that room had a very human explanation. The strangeness of it isn't in the what. It's 60 years. The silence. The specific, disciplined privacy of a woman who loved someone, kept that love in a locked room for her entire adult life, and made sure her family would find the key when she was gone. That's not a ghost story. It's something quieter and, I think, harder. My grandmother made biscuits every Sunday morning. She remembered every birthday. She drove 2 hours to Baton Rouge 3 times a week for 4 years to sit with her husband while he was sick and dying, and she did it without complaint, and she loved him. I believe that completely. She also kept 11 letters in a locked room for 60 years. Both of those things are true at the same time. They don't cancel each other out. They don't make her more complicated than she was. She was always exactly as complicated as every person is, which is more than we usually see. The locked room was hers. The key was a gift. I think she meant it as one. I think she spent 60 years deciding whether to give it to us, and in the end she decided we could be trusted with it. I hope she was right. If your family has a locked room, a literal one or a figurative one, a secret that got passed down, or a silence that never quite got explained, I'd like to hear from you. Leave it in the comments. This channel is here for exactly that. My name is Ryland Sawyer Hayes. This is Red State Horror. I'll see you next Thursday.